Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
And essentially we are the same.
Can't have government choosing winners or losers.
There are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is life illuminated. By Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians, a Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology, look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Hello and welcome back to Access to Democracy. I am Holly Jenkins, your guest host, and with me today is no stranger to the show. Commissioner Joe Atkins has been a guest a number of times, but welcome back. It's our first time talking together on the show. So
thank you. It's good to be back. I look forward to chatting.
Me too. We're just entering 2019, but I thought we could start by taking a look back on 2018 in Dakota County and some of the highlights and things that the county achieved. And, you know, county residents have consistently rated life in Dakota County a high quality of life, and I'm sure that's going to continue well into the future. In the last year, I know some of the exciting things. We had the Vikings training stadium move in, and Dakota County got their legislative priority with the Smart Center. I don't know if you want to share anything on what that is, or any progress reports on it, or any other highlights that come to mind from 2018.
Smart Center will be breaking ground this spring, and it, for those that are unfamiliar with what the Smart Center is, the legislature imposed on law enforcement officers some training requirements with respect to mental health and mental illness, chemical dependency issues, in an effort to prevent issues that are this big from becoming this big. But the training, there's really no place to train for these sorts of activities, these de-escalation exercises, crisis intervention exercises. So Dakota County actually got a grant, $6 million grant from the legislature to construct this Smart Center, which is a nice acronym, but it basically is a crisis intervention training, law enforcement training center, more on the soft skills. So you got in fact, over in Cottage Grove, they're working on hard skill. They call it the Hero Center there. Okay. But in Dakota County, it's going to work on those de-escalation efforts. And then in that same building, because we always want to put every square inch to use that we can, we've got an electronic crimes task force. As everybody knows, if you get those stupid emails or the phone calls, or there's more and more efforts to take advantage of people in an electronic fashion. We've got an electronic crimes task force that will also office there. They've seen a 300% increase in the number of requests for their assistance over the last 3 years. So those sorts of things are all going to be housed in that same location. The site is actually in Inver Grove Heights. Okay,
so that's going to break ground this spring. Any idea when it is slated to be up and running, if all goes well?
It should be open and running in 2020.
Okay, and I'm sure that the police force and others with the mental health professionals are going to be very excited to have that open up and in progress. And
the mental health community is excited about it. The law enforcement community is excited about it. And it's not just Dakota County law enforcement. It's not just Dakota County Sheriff and all of the various communities within Dakota County, but it'll be a regional training center.
And that's what I thought. It goes beyond Dakota County, so other outside cities and counties will be able to use this training center.
Yeah, so
and it's not a housing facility. It's really a training facility. So one of the as many good things as there are going on in Dakota County, there still does remain some of the challenges, and homelessness is one of them. Homelessness, a lot of people point to mental health as some of the reasons that people are homeless. And we read a lot about encampments that have popped up in Minneapolis, and I believe some of those issues have at least temporarily been resolved. What is Dakota County doing to address some of the homelessness that we have right here?
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, Holly, because some folks don't realize that we've got people who are experiencing homelessness here in Dakota County. And it's not to the degree that Ramsey County and Hennepin County see it. But there's, on any given night in our temporary, we've got emergency shelters that are underway in Dakota County throughout the winter months, throughout the cold months. And on any given night, we'll have scores of people that are staying there. It's a true credit, though, to how, you know, everybody talks about these public-private partnerships and how we all got, it's great talk, but very few people actually engage in it, or very few entities actually get it done. So we've got, at the county level, we've got cities cooperating, we've got faith communities that are working together with Matrix Services is who does the operations. This is what Matrix does.
And is Matrix actually an organization, or is that simply what this coalition of groups is called?
Nope, they're an organization.
It's an
This is what
okay.
they specialize in, is working with people who are experiencing homelessness and supplying them with and you hit, by the way, you hit a really critical point, which is more than half of the people that are experiencing homelessness have mental illness or chemical dependency issues. And so you can just address the symptoms and supply the housing, the temporary emergency housing that we're doing in conjunction with the faith communities and others. Lots of volunteers. I don't even know how many volunteers, but folks are coming in and cooking meals and bringing. It's just it just makes you feel good to see that kind of effort in a community here like Dakota County. But in addition to that, we want to make sure that we've got those services available, so that if people are looking to have their, you know, deal with their mental illness, deal with their chemical dependency, they've got that opportunity as well.
So the Smart Center will touch on not only hopefully some of the homelessness issues, because people will be getting help with their mental health issues, and that may steer people in a new direction, but it could also help to keep people from becoming incarcerated if they've conducted crimes because of mental health.
Yeah, we're mixing a couple things. We've got on the Smart Center is really going to be for that law enforcement training piece.
Okay.
So if you are that officer that encounters somebody who's experiencing a situation, in the old days you got very little training, sometimes none at all, about how to prevent that person who's got a mental illness and is in a bad situation from having that escalate into something much worse. And this is what the effort is going to be now, is to train those officers and those first responders so that they have the training to deal with folks who are experiencing an episode like that.
Okay.
In addition to that, we've got folks who are experiencing homelessness, and we're talking about making sure that they've got a warm place to be at night. And on top of that, by the way, some of this comes mandated. I don't want to take anything away from the state or federal government. Some of the things that the county does, we do because we have to. Some we do because we want to. There's lots of mandates that the state and the feds have for what counties have to do. Some of this is in that vein, but in Dakota County we try to not just do it in a way that, like I said earlier, that deals with the symptoms, but tries to get ahead of it to prevent it from occurring. So people who are experiencing homelessness, if the reason for that is because they lack work, we try to connect them with our job services so that they can find work, or at least help them find work. If it's a mental illness caused, then we try to connect them with the folks that are going to be able to assist them with that. If it's chemical dependency, there's folks that are able to give them some help with that.
Okay. So there's I believe last year the county held during the night they went out to see if they could count and find where homeless people were, and there's another one planned for this January. Is there an estimate of numbers right now of people that are in need of housing?
Well, last year I actually participated in, it's called the Point in Time.
Okay.
Count, and the federal government requires that you do this. I believe it's every January, because that's when we've been doing it. This year, I want to say it's on Wednesday, January 23rd. We literally drive around the county looking for folks. I always use the term people who are experiencing homelessness. I don't like to call those folks homeless because hopefully they are, it's a temporary issue and they can move from that situation. But the goal is to get an actual number of folks who are experiencing homelessness in Dakota County. That's then how you qualify for funding from the federal government for the programs that they require us to carry out.
Okay.
So we've got to have an accurate count. And that was an experience. That was a real eye-opener for somebody like me. I had never participated in that before. And so we stopped at a local gas station convenience store. And this is 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And the young woman who was working as cashier, we said, do you have folks that you think might be experiencing homelessness or, bouncing from place to place? And she looked at us, and it still kind of chokes me up today. She goes, me. Yeah. She was working the overnight shift at the C-store because she didn't have anywhere else to go. Okay. She had a car in the parking lot full of all of her possessions in the world. And to her credit, I mean, she was working and doing the best that she could to get out of it. But there were some resources that we had too that we were able to connect her with.
Yeah, well, and like you said, it's not necessarily homeless people, but it's people. I like that a lot that you compare to people who are suffering from homelessness, because it could actually be anybody at any time. There was recently a report showing that there's homeless people who have law degrees, who have advanced degrees, who have been business professionals, but they've suffered a trauma in their life, and as a result, that has led them down a path towards homelessness. So it's terrific to see the efforts being made by Dakota County to help these folks with a variety of partners. So that's good to see. On a semi-related,
just one quick thing I got to add though is it's not just Dakota County. We were at a Perkins, and all of the folks. There was a fella that had been I believe a business professor. Had experienced medical issues and some other things, and he had basically taken up residency in the back room at Perkins, where they got him coffee during the course of the night. Yeah. But it's way beyond just some county employees or county commissioners. It's a lot of good volunteers and faith communities and city councils that have said, we're going to let this church take in folks that are experiencing homelessness for a 2 or 3 week period. As it's been rotating from church to church throughout the county. And
on that note, and it's phenomenal. And I've actually had a chance to participate in some of those volunteer efforts at my local church, and it is incredibly rewarding. So if people can get out and help with that, that's terrific. If the volunteers did start to burn out, would you say that there is a longer term, more permanent solution coming along? There's a spot, in fact, one of the faith communities, they took the next step. River Heights Community Church along Cahill and Inver Grove Heights actually took some of their property and is working with Center City Housing Services. They're building housing. Yeah. And it's with embedded services within I believe there's 40 units. Okay. By the way, when we talk people experiencing homelessness, lots of folks picture the fella that's standing at the end of the freeway off-ramp or something. They see males, lots of families. We saw little kids. It's everybody. It's not any particular. So but the goal is to have permanent housing. And to get folks out of this situation where some of them just don't want it. I get that. We're not going to twist anybody's arm and force them into it. But there's housing that's going to be available, and it's a credit to River Heights Community Church. And there's others that are looking at doing that elsewhere in the county. But it's so that those folks then have housing, and then they have the services that they need to deal with whatever it is that was causing their housing issues to begin with. So somewhat related to homelessness, one of the reasons that some people find themselves in this situation is the lack of affordable housing. And that is one of the legislative priorities that the county board is pursuing this year. How can the state legislature help Dakota County on the issue of workforce housing or affordable housing and economic stability for folks?
Regardless of what you call it, because some folks call it affordable housing, some folks call it workforce housing. It's not just an issue here in Dakota County. I mean, it's across Minnesota. We've got a challenge here. I mean, I look at my own kids who are in their mid-20s. They got good jobs, they're looking at trying to find a place to live. It's a challenge to find any kind of affordable place to live.
Yeah.
And then you've got, across Dakota County, it's kind of a nice place to live. All this parks and open space and great things that we've got going out here, it drives up housing prices. And the challenge now is if you want to have teachers who can live where they work, if you want to have nurses or police officers or firefighters who can live where they work and be close to their jobs, that gets to be more and more challenging as housing prices continue to elevate. So we've got a community development agency. All of the county commissioners sit on this particular board as well. And there's a number of things that we're in the process of doing and have done. We're not going to make cheap housing, but hopefully we're able to assist some of the developers in providing a product that is at a price point that people can afford.
Okay. And now, if you're going to the state to ask for their support on this issue, what is it that the legislature can provide to Dakota County and other places that are prioritizing this as a goal?
And I don't want to tell the legislature necessarily what to do. I think there's a number of folks that have different ideas on how to go about it. I just hope that they're not overly prescriptive in how they go about doing it. The problem with the state sometimes, and I was there, I was a legislator, but I had been a mayor before that. And sometimes they're so well intended, but they send they put along so many strings attached on how you're going to do it, or they make it so bureaucratic that nobody can take advantage of it. So my hope is that they will likely do some bonding for it, or some low interest loan programs or that sort of thing, as long as they keep it fairly straightforward and just make the resources available, and then let the local governments be innovative and apply it in the best way that they can locally.
Okay.
Because the most responsive level of government is the most local government. The people that you can run into at the gas station or the grocery store, which I do all the time, that's where you're going to get the most responsiveness from your elected officials.
With you, and it's hard to get through a coffee shop without someone calling you out. So.
But you know what? That's where you get your best ideas and your best feedback, is if people know who you are. And Julia, my wife, and I will, when we go out to dinner, we always have that conversation, right? In town or out of town?
Yeah.
And in town means we're just going to run into a lot of folks, and that's great. And out of town means if we just want to, have a time for ourselves. And
and on that idea, the changing things locally, and then that's where it starts. You change things locally, and you can move up the ladder. And there's that school of thought: is it the change comes from the bottom and moves up, or top down? And in your case, you, since you've been a commissioner, have held listening sessions with constituents or Dakota County residents. I believe it's open to all. Done surveys to keep in touch with people. How have your surveys transitioned to action as a board member? Do you have any examples of?
Just about, and I'd like to say that I'm really smart and that I know what's going on and I know what's best for folks. I do these surveys primarily because they give me a good insight into what people want done. So I'll send out surveys about, tell me how your roads are, and I find out that certain, a road that I don't necessarily travel in my normal drive has a bunch of, potholes or cracks, or, pass that along to folks, and that or a sidewalk gets fixed or that sort of thing. So that is one way that it translates into action, is just finding out what's going on in other parts of the district or the county that I wasn't necessarily aware of.
Right.
But I'll give you a funny example, which is I actually do on April 1st of each year, I do these email updates, and I send them out every 3 weeks or so, and then I post in social media and that kind of thing. So April 1st, April Fool's Day, I actually posted one that said in one of my updates that we're bringing animals to Lebanon Hills Regional Park. We're bringing back some animals, and among those were bison and lions and tigers and bears, was what it grew into. And a number of folks took that seriously until they read to the bottom and it said it was an April Fool's joke. But there were so many people that said, actually, they thought bringing bison back would be a really good idea. So it started as a joke. And literally at our last meeting, we're looking into the feasibility of bringing bison back to, probably not at Lebanon Hills.
Well,
I don't know.
There's some prairies in Lebanon Hills. There might be some room for them.
But we used to have thousands of bison roaming Dakota County. and there's some actual very ecologically sound and good reasons why you want to have bison, in addition to the fact that kids and families love to look at them.
Right.
But they're really good for the soil. They're really good for the land. And you've got this 3/8 cent sales tax that we voted for back in 2008 that provides money to the state for these sorts of things.
You see.
So there's some talk of, you know, I wouldn't have folks waiting necessarily to see bison this summer, but maybe in years to come, that might be something that we try to bring back to.
I want to come back to bison, but before we head over there, just to follow up on the community engagement role and how you've taken it upon yourself to, you know, be open and available to the public. I think that ever since the 2016 election in particular, we've seen this huge upswing in the public that's engaged, that wants to be involved, that wants to have FaceTime with their elected officials. At the federal level, that was one of the biggest complaints against our former Congressman Jason Lewis, is that there were no opportunities to have town hall meetings with just open to the general public for his constituents. His predecessor, now our current Congresswoman Angie Craig, is hosting one already this early in her term. At the state level, you see the state reps and legislators from a select district hosting town hall meetings, so that all three of them are present for the folks that they are representing. At the local level, even at the city councils have listening sessions. What about that? County government is the one layer that's not hosting town hall meetings with all of the decision makers. Do you think it's time for the county board to start providing open forums for the general public to come out as a, you know, when you're out there, you're speaking for yourself, and that's fantastic, but you can't speak for all of them. Is it time for the county board to start hosting some town hall meetings?
It's an interesting thought. I've been doing town hall meetings or listening sessions or whatever we want to call them since I was mayor about 100 years ago. And I love them. I'm not quite sure why over the last couple of years there was such a lack of town meetings and listening sessions, and I get the impression that some of our elected officials, they didn't want to hear the negative stuff. And honestly, Holly, I think we benefit most by hearing the negative stuff. You find out what's wrong and you fix it. But if you don't even hear it, then how do you know what's going on or what's going wrong? I don't know that it makes having necessarily the whole group. Whenever I would do my town meetings, frankly, I didn't do them with the whole city council there at the same time, or the whole legislature there at the time. I generally would do mine based on, you know, who. So if when I tried was when I was a legislator, was to have our county commissioner, the mayor, myself, and the state senator all at the, so that people geographically have all their elected officials in the same place at the same time. I actually think that's the best way to do it. If we could do one with like Angie Craig and Mayor McGuire or Mayor Drost. My district is Rosemont, Egan, Inver Grove Heights. Mayor Turville in Inver Grove. But those sorts of things I think people really like, because then there's none of this. You can't say, well, you got to go talk to the city for that, or you got to talk to the state for that. One other observation I would make is I think there was an impression for a long time that the county was sort of boring, and that's where the boring stuff happened. So there was kind of a sense among county commissioners that people didn't really want to go to a town meeting with their county commissioner. And folks are starting to discover that the county, you know, when I go door to door, people would say, well, what does the county do? And I'd say, well, look out your back window here. You got Cliff Road, you know, County Road. You got the county sheriff, the county attorney if you get in trouble. You got all the various county services that we provide. You got county parks at Lebanon Hills. You've got county trails and all these, and people at the county libraries, and they're, you know, they start to look at you like, oh my goodness, the county really does, as you noted. The county's engaged in a lot of stuff.
The county has a lot to do with the everyday issues, and as you said, you're the folks who are closest to reach. You are right here in our communities, and so by bringing those people together, we can have these community-based discussions, and right now that just doesn't happen. So right now there's a county initiative, and I know that this is also a legislative priority for the board, is to increase the natural resource stewardship and environmental protection, and how valuable it would be to pull people together to talk more about these issues the Farmland and Natural Areas program, which my understanding it's a model for the country to look at. It's an award-winning, nationally acclaimed model for land conservation, and in 2019 they're going to be updating that program. What are the chances that there will be an open forum so that people can learn more about that and what it's done? If you want to talk about it a little bit here.
Oh, I'd love to talk about it.
What's coming up, what's on the front for that program, because you're still pursuing the goals of it.
Now
but you don't hear
I'll
much
tell
about
you,
it.
to a great credit to folks all the way dating back to 2002, and I was a little bit of a player in it, but there were so many folks that did great things. They passed a referendum in 2002 that provided funds to preserve open space and natural areas and farmlands, and that's one thing we got to make sure that we don't talk too fancy about all this stuff, you know, because there's people put these fancy terms on it. The fact is, Dakota County, part of the reason so many people live here in Dakota County is we got this great open space and woodlands and wetlands and parks and trails, and it's just such a neat place.
Forever wild.
You literally, yeah, that's our theme for our Dakota County parks are forever wild.
So unique, yes.
All these great things that we have in Dakota County, part of the reason why people love to live here, and we've got a new residential survey going out in 2019, but we hear it every 2 or 3 years when we do those surveys. That's what people just love about, in addition to great schools. We got 7 of the top school districts in the country. I mean, it's just a really lot of good things going in Dakota County. But as we update this, so we're going to have further chats about what is it that we want to do relative to, you know, are people still interested in preserving woodlands and wetlands and open space and natural areas? Is that important to you?
Right.
So there are going to be some open forums and discussions over the next 12 months to talk about how important that is to people. Obviously, it's important to me if you can't tell.
Well, and as you said, every survey that's been done going back as at least through for the last decade and longer, people have continually actually increased their interest in their.
Yeah, it's steadily gone up.
It's very relevant, and so I'll look forward to more opportunities to talk about that farmland and natural areas, in addition to the increased spending that's taking place now in the Forever Wild Park system to restore those landscapes. And we could talk about that for another half hour, so we're going to run out of time before we get everything covered.
Let's just keep talking. What are they going to do? Shut us off?
I'll get in a lot of trouble from Alan. I will be excited to see the bison, because I know that that's a huge part of keeping these ecosystems healthy. So we'll keep tabs on that and help to. I know
right now it's just a feasibility study, so
let's
not get too far.
We won't start sending
ahead
people
of
out
ourselves.
to watch the bison, but we'll hope that that comes through. And finally, I just want to point out. On your Dakota County website page, you have listed, and you've promoted this on Facebook, Dakota County's 50 coolest free places to visit. Have you been to all 50, and do you have a favorite?
Oh, I have so many favorites. I've been to 48.
48, all right.
There's only 2 left there in the southern reaches of the county, and they're on my summer to-do list. My favorite, without a doubt, is Lebanon Hills Park. I love Lebanon Hills.
We certainly have that in common.
And that was probably no secret to anybody. But in all fairness, there's so many great spots that if you get a chance, there's things that people don't even realize are in Dakota County, and they're so cool.
Just educate yourself. It's a pretty neat document to read, so I encourage people to look at that. But we're pretty much out of time. Thank you so much for keeping Dakota County a great place to live and work, and I hope we have a lot more to talk about, so I hope we'll see you back here soon.
Do this again.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks for watching Access to Democracy.